NASCAR Strategy Show. I'm Alex Baker, and I'm joined today by Phil Bennetzen. Phil, how are you doing?
Great, Alex. Great. Glad to be here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so we got some racing in Bristol. Hopefully it'll happen tomorrow. We've been seeing a lot of these rain ads recently. But yeah, so we've had two races in Charlotte so far, and two races before that, both medium length racetracks. But now we're going to Bristol, and Bristol is only a little bit more than a half mile. So, what have we seen so far in these four races since the resumption of NASCAR, and what's going to be different this week?
Well, like you addressed, we're going from the egg shape of Darlington, which is just a little bit more than a mile. Then we had Charlotte, which is a mile and a half intermediate track. Now we're going to Bristol, a 0.533 long concrete oval, high banks. You know, we kind of had that with Darlington with the high banks, but I mean, you compare the size and the shape of Darlington and Bristol. The only thing similar about these would be kind of the banking going into the corners. And then if you try to compare apples to apples with Charlotte and Bristol, and there's nothing really to compare. So this is definitely going to be different racing compared to these last two races. And I looked at the forecast. Sunny with a high of 73 tomorrow. No chance of rain. It's going to be nice not having to worry about a red flag scenario with the rain totally changing the scenario of the race. I mean, Wednesday night, William Byron was set up to just start knocking off laps led points and fastest laps after he finally wrestled that lead away from Matty D. But then we get the competition caution because of the rain, and he gets hit in the side by Corey LaJoie, totally messing up his night. So could have been a totally different race. Now we don't have to worry about that scenario. We look like we're going to have 500 laps of short track racing at Bristol. Can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, this will be great. I mean, 500 laps, that's more than twice as many as the last race. So we're going to see a lot more laps led and fastest lap points. Of course, that really significant for the strategy. But let's talk a little bit about the crashes, because I'm sure everyone who's played the last few slates, man, there have been some like insane like swings. Like Bubba Wallace had like a really high running order last time. He's in all the winning lineups, and then all of a sudden he's in last place basically.
Right.
Now, how does Bristol compare as far as the chance of someone being taken out of the race to Darlington or Charlotte?
Well, yeah, you are talking about a shorter track. Really, there's only two grooves. You've got the bottom groove, and then you've got the high groove against the wall. And you know you're knocking off lap times at about 15 seconds a clip. So I mean, you are constantly on the wheel. You are constantly turning, constantly beating and banging against people trying to gain position. This is a track that is generally it's tough to pass at. You know, initially at the green flag, depending on what lane you're in, you can maneuver yourself through some positions. But once you get settled in and your tires are about the same as everybody else's, you are kind of stuck where you are. And if you want to maneuver yourself forward, you might have to put the chrome horn on somebody in order to get them out of your way. So we're definitely going to see a lot more wreck scenarios. Might see people get turned. The famous clip that you will probably see 1,000 times tomorrow is from the 1996 or 1997 night race when Terry Labonte was leading and Dale Earnhardt put his front bumper into Terry's rear quarter panel, turned him, and of course, since it was Dale Earnhardt, he was able to go off scotch-free, didn't get black flagged, whatever. He was able to win the race, and Terry had to act like, oh, it's okay, it's Dale. You will see tons of beating and banging. Guys are going to get hit, and hopefully, if they get turned, it happens in a corner when no one else is coming around, and they can just throw the yellow flag, restart, get on their way. So don't be surprised when you see guys getting hit or getting turned. It's just a nature of this short track with nowhere to go.
Yeah, so some conditions that can make a really interesting race if people are starting to push for position. If you want to see an exciting race, make sure to click on the thumbs up button here. That'll make sure that our prognostication abilities are maximum and you have a good sweat going in. Yeah, so one of the big differences is that the lap times are much lower because it's such a low, short racetrack, and that means people fall behind in laps very quickly. And a lot of times you'll see only about half of the field be on the lead lap with a chance to win going into the end of the race. So, um, how does that affect our general strategy for maybe targeting some of the mid range guys? Because it seems like their chance to win might be even lower than normal.
Yeah, the viability of these mid pack guys and especially the punts is really going to make lineups, because if you can get a guy that can just manage to stay on the lead lap, that will really it will dramatically improve his chances of getting a higher and higher finish throughout the race. And this it'll probably go a little bit under the radar on FanDuel, but you've got punts at $2,000. So I mean, if you wanted to just make a stacked lineup of potential dominators plus a $2,000 guy, I mean, it's on the table. But the thing that's going to make these $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 punts more valuable than the others is who can finish closest to completing all 500 laps versus the others. Remember, just for finishing the race on the lead lap, we're talking about 50 points on FanDuel. Every time that you complete a lap, you're getting 0.1 points. So if you can get a $2,000 punt, like let's say, looking here at some of these names, like you've got Timmy Hill, BJ McLeod, that are both $2,000. You've got Brennan Poole, who's 2,500, Gray Gaulding, Garrett Smith, 2,000, Corey LaJoy is only 3,000. If you can get a guy that only finishes 5 or 6 laps down, you're talking about 49.5, 49.4 points right there, versus one of these guys that may end up 20 to 30 laps down, or even worse, one of these guys who mysteriously leaves the race because of a suspension issue. So, yeah, if you can get a guy, now chances are that a Brennan Poole's not going to finish the race on the lead lap. But if you can get a guy in these mid teens or even in the 20s that on 6K, 7K, 8K on DraftKings, that's going to finish the race on the lead lap, and if this race stays green, where the guy up front, the lap leader, is just continually going through the field, putting guys a lap down, but this guy is able to hang on 12th to 13th. And by attrition, just maneuver his way forward. It's going those finishing position points are going to be so valuable to giving you differentiation versus the rest of the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. Because with so many laps, there's going to be guys putting up 100 plus points potentially, and if there's more than one, you're going to need to really hit some low price guys, and that's going to be very difficult. So we're going to talk later in the show about who we're looking at to maybe like fill out the 5th and 6th spots in the lineup, because it's going to be very difficult today. On FanDuel, you made an interesting point, which is that whoever just finishes the most laps of these bad drivers could be in the winning lineup. They've been pricing everything really like player friendly as far as like being able to fit your favorites. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, so let's go back to the lap sled and fastest laps. So one of the common kind of lineup construction strategies in NASCAR is you got to figure out the number of dominators. Now there have been some races at Bristol, and the other short track is Martinsville that I've been looking at. And one of these races, Martin Truex led like 450 laps or something like that. So in that kind of scenario, it's like a one dominator kind of deal. But what's the norm at Bristol as far as how many dominators usually crack the winning lineup?
It varies, and I think because of the high banks at Bristol, it kind of keeps one driver from being able to just sit on the lead. We saw it last year with Brad Keselowski at, I believe it was either Martinsville or Richmond. He got to the lead after, I think he started third that race. Joey Logano and whoever started second faded behind him, and Brad just sat there all day. I mean, it made for a horribly boring race to watch unless you had Brad in all of your lineups. Then you were counting your money. Here at Bristol, because of the high banks, and then we've also got stage cautions and what have you. We see tons of different scenarios when it comes to these dominators. Now, if you've got access to the race sheets, they're pinned in the NASCAR Slack. You go there, look at the lap sled data page, and you see so many different scenarios with this races. I generally keep tally with dominators, as in drivers that have led at least 10% of the race. So we're talking about 50 laps in this case. We've got races where we've got at least 6 drivers who have led 10% or more of the race. And then we've got races where only 2 drivers have led 10% or more of the race, where they've just been able to sit and accumulate those laps led, fastest laps, just knocking them off. In the article that posted this morning, I went over the dominators from last year's races. Reminder, last year at Bristol, the only 2 races that we have in the 750 horsepower package. As far as number of drivers who led 10% or more of the race, last year we had 3 drivers in the spring race. Then you move to the fall/August race, and we had 5 drivers that led at least 10% or more of the race. Now, when it came to the optimal lineups in the spring race, you only really needed 2. That was Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. Clint Bowyer didn't exactly lead that many laps, but he knocked down a bunch of fastest laps. And then you had place differential /value with Suarez, Matty D, and Ty Dillon. You go to the August race, and you've got a 4 dominator build. You've got Brad Keselowski leading laps. You've got Denny Hamlin leading laps from the pole. You've got Kyle Larson leading laps. And then you've got Matty D, who was a 300-1 pick that day, started 7th, worked his way to the lead, and was well on his way to winning that race before he ran into the roadblock that is Ryan Newman, and then eventually he was able to pass him. So spring race, you've got a 2, 2.5, 3 dominator build, and then in the fall, you've got a 4 dominator build. It really is a product of the racing and what happens with cautions. I believe probably the greener that the race is, the less likely that you're going to need 4 dominators, but the more cautions, thus the more ability that people actually have to grab the lead on pit road or on restarts, and then accumulate laps led. So I think it really comes down to your expectations. Do you see a green race tomorrow? Then you're looking at, at the minimum 2, probably 3. But if this is going to be a wreck fest, then you're probably looking at 4.
Man, so I think the main takeaway with that is that you can pretty much build your lineup however you want, and there's a reasonable possibility you just get it right.
Yeah, so, there is no cheat code when it comes here to Bristol. I mean, you can build the way that you think that the race is gonna happen, but see a totally different scenario happen.
Yeah, you like to see that because it gives everyone kind of a good chance. If you spend all your salary, that you'll have a good lineup. And make sure to check out Phil's article every week. He does a great job breaking down the previous races at the track and kind of the trends, and also giving some plays. So that's a great resource. Let's talk about the dominators today. One thing I've noticed with all these short track races is that Kyle Busch, he's always the favorite, and he's always like between 2 and 4 to 1 to win. So like between a 20 to 40% chance. And today, the best odds I could find for him were 3.5 to 1. So, I mean, that's exceptional as far as almost a 40 driver field, and he's winning almost a third of the time. So, is Kyle Busch just the guy to start off your lineup with?
Whew, yeah. It just excluding salary, like if salary wasn't a thing, we were talking about, super draft and their multiplier. Although you're not going to get much, it's just the fact that Kyle has been so good at Bristol. He's won the last 2 spring Bristol races. If I go here to the last 10 races tab here on the race sheets and look at Kyle's history, going in reverse, it's 4th, 1st. You've got a nod 20th, but I think that was because he got involved in a wreck early and he just never had the speed to compete with everybody else. But then a 1st and a 1st. Kyle has been super good here. It's a product of Joe Gibbs having such a tremendous short track program. Whether you're looking at Cup or you're looking at Xfinity, they do a really good job of getting these cars prepared for short tracks, and it definitely shows here at Bristol. That being said, do you really want to pay $14,000 for him on FanDuel or $12,500 on DK? You need a lot of points from Kyle, and in last year's races, Kyle scored over 90 DraftKings points in both races, yet he still didn't end up in the optimal lineup.
Yeah, wow, that's shocking that like he could put up almost 100 and not be in the best lineup. So
Yeah,
that is a realistic possibility because the bottom guys that you need to get in your lineup to fit them in, you're making a big trade off there.
yeah.
Now 12.5K, that looks pretty good compared to his prices this past week at Xfinity and Truck, where he's like 15 or 16K,
Yeah.
but it's still a pretty high price tag. Now it's all going to come down to his ownership for me. And I haven't updated the ownership this week, still waiting for kind of see where everyone's at. But so I have his floor score, his projection I have is 83 points. So I mean, the highest projection in the field by a good amount. Now his floor, which I define as being bottom 25%, would be 41 points. So there is like a really significant chance that he busts here. But then again, I mean, he's nearly uh, a 1 in 4 chance to win the race and probably lead a lot of laps on the way. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a really big decision point whether you go with him or if you go with another Dominator that's cheaper, but no one else has comparable odds to win. The next closest is Chase Elliott. He actually, the odds makers are giving him a pretty good chance today or tomorrow. I had him at 4.5 to 1. So I was a little surprised by that. Is that based on his short track record? Because usually he's more in the like 8 to 10 range, I'd say.
Yeah, if I go here to the super sheet and I look at what he did in this package last year, Chase had a driver rating of 92.3, and I do believe that this has Phoenix added to it as well, because that's the only race that we've seen this year in that package. So a driver rating of 92.3, which is pretty good. He has an average start of 3.3, so he generally qualifies really well, but his average finish is 14.8, and his average running position is 13.4. Out of, well, actually, I've been fibbing to you, which is horribly embarrassing. What it appears I did here on this sheet, but I'll add a secondary sheet later of the 750 horsepower package. But on the main sheet of the super sheets is the combination of Bristol and Dover, shorter high banked races in those four races. So we're still talking about a 13.4 average running position, a 14.8 average finish in those 4 races, 2 top 5s in those races. Average fastest laps 22.8, and average laps led 54. So I mean, this should suit Chase, and I believe that his price is 11.3. That's I have to think that's the most expensive that we've seen Chase on DraftKings, and it's probably a result of just how hot he's been since we've come back from the break. If you look at Chase's last three finishes in the spring races, 11th, 29th, 7th, and he started on the pole in this race last year, and I believe that he only led somewhere in the range of he led 38 laps. So, has he learned something in that short amount of time to come into this race? I mean, you have to believe so. And Chase has been a bit of a streaky driver throughout his career, and now he's coming off of a truck win and the win on Wednesday night. So no reason not to jump off that bandwagon right now.
Yeah, so that's definitely encouraging that he has a 2-race win streak. That's amazing, but that is raising some red flags for me as far as the Vegas odds, because the Vegas odds are really a measure of the demand of these different drivers. And if people are trying to ride this hot streak, that 4.75 to 1 I'm seeing, maybe just a bad price that different sports books are giving. So I'll look to see how competition affects that between tomorrow and today. So keep an eye on that. But 4.7 to 5 to 1, that'll be the second best odds of anyone. And you can't fake getting first in NASCAR. Like, it's almost impossible for it to be like a fluke. So
right,
yeah.
These haven't been plate races. These have
yeah, exactly. So definitely some encouraging signs, and the price tag of 11.3K, the fourth highest on the slate on DraftKings.
Right.
Now, one guy that's intriguing at his price is Brad Keselowski. He's 9,100 on DraftKings, and he's starting first. Now, I was doing research into the pole position and how that affects drivers. It doesn't seem to be as beneficial in a short track as it is in a medium length track, but still a significant factor. I have him with a decent amount of laps led here. Actually, the highest number at 68, because he is starting in first, but not one of the betting favorites to finish the race in first. So, how are you approaching Keselowski?
Whatever questions I had about Keselowski, he answered when he started on the pole at Darlington, led 80 of the 293 laps. Now he finished 13th, so he scuffled towards the end. But what I'm more worried about here is just what is his potential to actually lead laps. So I think he's definitely more than capable of leading laps from the pole on Sunday. In the last race here at Bristol in the fall / summer, I look back here. Yeah, he started 13th, and he ended up scoring 94.75 DraftKings points. He was, I believe, look here at the laps led data. Yeah, he was the top lap leader in that race. So I don't need Brad to win, especially at just 9,100 here on DraftKings. And like you said, the pole sitter here at Bristol, Denny Hamlin started on the pole last year and he won. Now before that, in the spring, Chase finished 11th. But you go back over these finishes: second in the fall of 2018, first in the spring race, second in the fall of 2017, fourth in the spring race, sixth in the fall race of 2016, first in the spring. 2015, third in the fall, first in the spring. So even if Brad doesn't win, I still like his likelihood to win, and the chances are high that he's still going to bring home a top 5 finish.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the great starting position to rack up some Dominator points, and certainly one of the guys that's going to finish on the lead lap and high in the order. I have him as my top value on DraftKings as points per dollar, which is like absolutely crazy because he's 9,100.
Right.
But that's just Bristol. So like the best values are going to be these top guys really, and we'll get to the cheapies in a second. But pretty slim pickings. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the other candidates to be one of your dominators. Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, they seem to be a little bit overpriced on DraftKings at 12.2 and 11.6K, given that they're starting 8th and 10th. Not really great for leading laps at the start of the race, and their odds to win aren't nearly as high as a Kyle Busch or Chase Elliott. So what are you going to do with Harvick and Hamlin, given that maybe they're not quite as good plays on average as Busch and Elliott?
Yeah. Denny, I'm going to give some dap to just because of his win last year at this track. Denny's been pretty good in the 750 horsepower package. In the 4 races at Bristol and Dover last year, he of course had the win, but also two other top fives. He had a average finish of 8th. So pretty good numbers there. When Denny's not having mechanical issues this year, he's running pretty well. At 11.6, you definitely need dominator points from him. Now Kevin Harvick at 12.2, that's just a play that I don't see myself making. Like if we had practice data and he was clicking off some really good consistent high numbers, then I'd be looking towards them. But just on the surface right now, it's probably a no for me. The last 3 spring races finishes of 13th, 7th, and 3rd. So I mean, he's definitely gonna be a top 10 car, but his viability to actually get to the front and lead laps, I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity cost couldn't be higher too, because not only are they super expensive, but you can get Kyle Busch for only 300 more than Harvick.
Right.
And we'll see how that shakes out as far as ownership. But what I'm seeing is that when you load up DraftKings or you load up FanDuel, the average points for Harvick are the highest in the field. So I'm thinking that's going to drive significant ownership to him over Busch, who has been having a rough time. Now, he did fall 2 laps behind in the last race, which was uncharacteristic to say the least. But that was just some random, like car trouble, right? That wasn't anything that should have any predictive value to this week. Is that right?
Yeah, and for the casual person that isn't divesting hours of their time into research and they're just looking through the box scores, click on a player's name on their phone when they're building their lineups, they're going to see Harvick and see that he doesn't have a finish outside of the top 10 this season. So I mean, probably to your casual player, he's going to seem like a lock play. But yeah, I mean, if I can just pay $300 extra and get access to Kyle Busch, who seems like he has much more potential to lead laps, I'm always going to pick Kyle.
Nice. So Harvick may be a good candidate to leave off this week. 2 more guys I want to talk about. So Joey Logano, he's starting 3rd, and we saw in the race Thursday that starting in the top 4 gives you that potential to lead the laps early. We saw Matt DiBenedetto kind of shoot to the front early in the last race.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't able to maintain that for very long, but that does give you that potential to maybe sneak ahead of Keselowski and get those laps slotted at the start of the race if Brad's having a rougher day. Now, Logano, he's still really expensive at 10.7K. So how confident do you feel that maybe he would take an early lead here?
I wonder what the game plan is for Penske, considering he's got his 3 drivers starting in the top 4. Because Eric Almirola will get will get shuffled, and he'll probably fall back somewhere around seventh or eighth. And Almirola's having a really good year. There's a reason why he was in the top 12 and ended up in the random draw pulling second. But Almirola will ultimately get passed probably by Logano and Blaney. So maybe Penske plays a long game with this, considering there's 500 laps, and they just kind of let Brad sit on the lead and just roll a bunch of laps off until the end of the first segment, while Logano and Blaney sit back there and protect the lead. Or maybe they don't, and Logano wants to grab the lead himself. I'm placing a lot of emphasis on starting position for these Dominators. Looking primarily at the top 6-7 starters. Something I highlighted in the article is that the majority of our top 2 lap leaders in the 14 races that we've had at Bristol with the Generation 6 car, is the majority of these guys are starting top 7. We've had 20 out of those 28 drivers start 7th or better. And of course, the closer to the lead that you start, the better the chances are that you are going to inherit that lead. So, yeah, Brad, of course. And if Logano's second in line, Logano's got a really good pit crew. He'll find his way to the front. He did it in the last race, leading a bunch of laps, and he did it last year, leading a bunch of laps. Him and Blaney basically, exchanging the lead throughout the majority of the race.
Nice. Yeah. So you raised some interesting questions. Like, I mean, stage 1 is 125 laps. That's 30 laps led points on DraftKings. So if teams are likely to just let Brad kind of get to the end of stage 1 and first, maybe make a move towards the end of the stage where it actually matters, then Brad could be like a shoe-in for the optimal lineup, even if he does finish in 10th. So he seems like a really strong play. And then if you don't have Brad, you need one of these other guys like Logano and Blaney, who you mentioned, are going to be pressing early in the race at the start. They could push for position, but maybe not. Now, Blaney, he was the super chalk last week. He's just as cheap this week, but this starting 4th, that kind of makes him tougher. It makes it tougher for him to have that floor. And I'm a little concerned that he's not going to lead a lot of laps, and he's not going to get place differential, obviously. So how are you handling Blaney this week?
Blaney, I'm viewing as a potential dominator based off of what he did here last year, leading over 100 laps, I believe. But thankfully, he's still 8,600. He's underpriced for his talent, for his car, and even if he doesn't lead any laps, he could still knock off, let's say, 30 to 35 fastest laps, finish top 5, and still be a good play, much like Clint Boyer was last year at a similar price.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I think that, I mean, his odds to win are solid. He's at 12-1, so definitely one of the better picks, and he's got a good starting position, but not as much of kind of lack as some of the other guys, I'd say. And let's talk about Martin Truex, because I think he's going to be the most popular of anyone. We saw him be the total chalk on Thursday, over 50% owned. That was because he had such a low price tag. Now, again, he's 9,400, starting 5th. I mean, that's not great. But that price tag and that name recognition, that's like 2K cheaper than you get him on a normal week. So you think, again, people are going to go to Truex. And how do you feel about his chances?
For his salary, I mean, it's tough to pass up Martin because you're getting him at about a $1,000 to $2,000 discount. Perhaps if people dig deep enough, they'll see that Bristol, despite Martin having this connection with Joe Gibbs for all these years, it really hasn't translated into how he's raced it at Bristol. If you just isolate the spring races, finishes of 17th, 30th, and you got an 8th back in 2017. But if you look at the last 10 races at Bristol overall, we're talking about 13th, 17th, 30, 30, 21st, 8th, 23rd, 14th, 28th, 29th. So there's something about Bristol, oddly enough, that just it doesn't seem to suit his racing style, or else he's just consistently finding bad luck here. And it doesn't make any sense because he's really, really good at Dover, which is a very comparable track to Bristol. So, if people are looking to find value, they'll probably go to Martin Truex, but just on the surface, looking at his numbers, he's probably a guy that I'm not going to find a way into my lineups. Plus, Charlotte should have been a track that Martin really would have found a lot of success at. And in the Coke 600, perhaps if Bowman hadn't pulled that 2-tire maneuver and been able to sit out in front, Truex probably would have just knocked down a bunch of laps led during that race. But you come back to the night race, and he can't lead any laps, and all he does is finish ninth, despite being the one of the major chalk plays of that night. So probably right now on a Saturday, looking at Martin Truex Jr. for 12,500 on FanDuel, 9,400 on DraftKings. I'm just not going that direction.
Yeah, I tend to agree more on game theory justification than anything, just because I think he's going to be super popular. Then again, I'm looking at his game log, and it's pretty ugly. He has one where he got 88. Everything else is 50 or less. I mean, we know he's way better than that, but I'm just wondering if everyone else is going to realize that. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, the Vegas odds drive ownership a ton. He's 8.51, probably the best odds per dollar of anyone. So let's move on. Let's talk about some of the guys that you're going to need to fit in with these dominators to actually get under the 50K, which unfortunately is a requirement again this week. And I'll throw it to you. Is there any particular name that you like? I see you mentioned Ty Dillon, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, but who'd be your number one play to complete your lineup?
If you've gone with a more balanced build and you're kind of searching in that mid-6 range, I'm not afraid of embracing chalk, and I think that Ty Dillon or his brother Austin are going to be the preferred plays. Austin got priced down because he starts 20th, but Austin's been, I'm not going to say good, but he's been okay here at Bristol in the last 3 spring races. He's finished 14th, 15th, and 13th. 2 of those finishes were both on the lead lap, so Austin can maneuver his way around here and stay on the lead lap. Ty is going to offer you a little more place differential, starting 29th. His last 3 finishes, 15th, 28th, and 15th in these spring races, and 2 of those finishes were on the lead lap. So perhaps Ty has a little more floor and a little more ceiling because of his place differential, but Austin's kind of in that same light for me. If you need to save money because you're going with a 3 to 4 Dominator build with some of the higher priced guys, looking down here at the 5Ks and the 4Ks, DraftKings did some really interesting things with their salaries because for the foreseeable future, it looks like they're going to try to base everything off of where drivers are starting. You've got John Hunter Nemechek starting 18th at just 5,500. He showed at Darlington, the high banks there, that he can hang with the top 10 finish. Hunter was really good in the Xfinity races here at Bristol last year with 2 top 5 finishes. You go down the starting grid, if you're wanting to do something a little more secure because of place differential, you've got Cole Custer starting 22nd. All of these rookies, they've got experience here with the Xfinity cars that drive similar to this 750 horsepower package. So you've got Cole, you've got John Hunter Nemechek down there starting 35th. You've got Christopher Bell. He's priced up a bit because of his starting position. If you can afford Christopher Bell, that seems like a pretty good place differential play. Then you've got Bubba at 7,500 starting 36. Bubba back-to-back races here in the spring, 20th and 16th. Both of those races he ended up on not on the lead lap, but he's still showing the capability to maneuver his way through this race and finish it. Most importantly, hopefully not like the last two races at Charlotte. And if you really need to save money, Michael McDowell is getting disrespected by DraftKings at 4,900. Remember the last Wednesday night, he was, what was he, 4,500, even though he, we get it. He was starting third, but this race now he's starting 25th. He has some place differential. We know he's going to compete in the race. 4,900 is probably a pretty good play for him, and if all he does is hold steady and finish the race, he'll probably end up making value for you on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's interesting because because DraftKings priced everything off the starting position, it kind of incorporates that placement differential into the projection. So you got guys like Michael McDowell that might be starting a little bit farther forward, but he's gonna finish certainly above the other guys in the 4Ks by a significant amount. So it's based on the placement points. He's gonna put up a decent score most nights.
Right.
Now I gotta look towards Christopher Bell and Bubba Wallace because, man, these guys are starting way back. We got Christopher Bell. He's starting. Let's see. Christopher Bell starting 35th, and he's been pretty fast, especially compared to that. He was definitely a lead lap driver in each of the four last races, aside from, he didn't complete some of them, or he had some car troubles or something. Yeah. I just know the one night I had a ton of them, he did really terribly.
Yeah.
So he seems like a good bet. And then we have Bubba Wallace. He was really popular last race, and he disappointed because he didn't finish because of car troubles again. I think he hit the wall or something, right? So, he seems like a safe bet at that $7,500 price tag. I know that's not going to make it easy to get 3 Dominators, but is he just kind of a guy you plug and play in any lineup?
Yeah, I haven't really played around with a cash lineup too much, but I bet if you went with a 2 Dominator build, you could probably get Bubba and Bell in there pretty comfortably, giving you tons of place differential.
Yeah, definitely. And then as far as the real cheap guys, Michael McDowell, you mentioned him, as well as Austin Dillon. Let me see who else is jumping out at me. So the really low, I do see Bailey Curry. I have projected for 0 fantasy points, so I'd probably avoid him. JJ Yaley, he's been a guy that he's kind of the second to last tier, where he's a lot faster than guys like Quinn Hoof and Garrett Smithley. He's been moving around cars a little bit, but the thing I'm looking at with JJ Yaley is that starting position of 40.
Yeah,
like you can't score negative at least. So is he a guy that maybe he sneaks up to the 30th by the end of the race?
Yeah, for sure. 5,300 for the driver starting dead last. That's doable because, like you said, all we need is him to just move up 5, 6, 7 positions, maybe even more if this becomes an attrition race, and boom, you've got it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's you got guys like Timmy Hill and BJ McLeod that are a lot slower, as well as Smithley, Hoof, Gase. I just want to emphasize that Yaley has been faster than those guys. So
yeah, I was looking at the 4 finishes in the Dover and Bristol races. Yaley had an average finish of 30th. So you give him 10 place differential spots, it works.
That seems like a guy that could crack the optimal pretty easily. Brennan Poole, decent value. Corey LaJoie, 5,700 seems like a lot, but he's consistently faster than pretty much every name I've mentioned so far, and he's starting 32nd. Do you think you're going to end up with any LaJoie?
I am so frustrated with Corey. Like, my expectations for LaJoie in this in the 32 Go Fast racing car, they have just not been met. We knew there was a technical alliance this year with Stewart-Haas Racing, and I've been expecting better results for Corey this season. But I mean, they are just not manifesting themselves. Like, let me go to what he's done this season. 19th and 23rd, which are better for his finishes at Charlotte. But then you've got 24th, 31st, 27th, 29th, and then at the very beginning of the year, 8th and 16th. So, I mean, really, since Las Vegas, and Las Vegas was a product of it just being a crazy race where everybody was wrecking out. So he found his way to 16th through attrition. But since then, whatever alliance there is with Stewart-Haas, it is not showing up in the results tab for Corey. He's got positions to gain. He's better than Garrett Smithley, Gray Galding, Quinn Hoff, Joey Gase, Bailey Curry. Better than Ty Dillon probably. Just it really is just a matter of whether he can put everything together and end up probably 23rd to 25th.
Yeah, definitely. He seems like a sneaky play because he's expensive enough that I think people will just spend up a little bit and get some guys like Ryan Preece and Ty Dillon that may be better.
Yeah.
But if those guys have a bad night or a bad day, then I think that he can sneak into the optimal. Now let's talk about some of these guys that we glossed over. We got Jimmy Johnson and Clint Boyer. I mean, they were like super high priced last race, starting really far back, and they put up pretty good fantasy totals. But I don't think either one was in the optimal, if I remember correctly, which was I think Jimmy Johnson put up like 67, and that was kind of what I expected. Is he's like so expensive that even the place differential wouldn't really carry him. Now he's 10.2K starting 24th, so he has a high price tag again, but not as good as starting position. So he's just not really like a guy I think I'm going to land on, as well as Boyer, who's only $400 less. I mean, these are guys that it just seems like it's going to be tough for them to get there. What do you think?
Right. My main question for Boyer and Johnson is just what do they end up scoring, and does it become better value than what you're going to get from these dominators? I'm not expecting Boyer or Johnson to maneuver their way into the top 5 and to lead laps. So expectations for them are based purely off of place differential and whatever fastest laps they get in the process. Both of these guys have been really good at Bristol. Boyer was like amazing in this package last year. I do believe that in these 4 races that he was tied for the second best average finish among all the drivers, an average finish of 8.3 in these races. No wins, no top 5s, but 3 top 10s. So he was consistently finding his way into the top 10. I'm going to pull up your projections here, and I want to see just what. Okay. To pull the cover back, you've got Jimmy at 45.6 on DraftKings at 10.2, and you've got Clint at 41.3 at 9,800. I mean, if I'm going to pay 10,000, 20,000 combined for these 2, I think I need a little bit more than just those points.
Exactly, yeah. Especially when you're looking at Truex and Keselowski at a cheaper price point, it's like not even really comparable.
Yeah.
So I think those are two guys where I'm going to probably fade. But I mean, there's an outside shot that these guys could win the race. I mean, Clint Boyer's 30-1, Jimmy Johnson's 22-1, so they're in the mix. Now, we got the guys starting 11th through 15th that are all kind of in no man's land. We got Alex Bowman at 11, Kurt Busch at 12, William Byron at 13, Ken Smith at 14, and Eric Jones at 15. I mean, these are all solid drivers, but they're kind of in the zone where you can't get place differential. They're not cheap, and it's going to be hard for them to lead the laps. So, is there any of these guys that are jumping out at you, or is this kind of a situation to stay away from?
Bowman is becoming a driver where you need to have a sprinkle regardless of where we're at. Because I totally discounted him as a potential lap leader. I mean, we didn't bring him up whatsoever last Sunday for the Coke 600. He was out of sight, out of mind. It didn't seem like, Charlotte was a track that he could easily get a top 5 at, but the potential of him leading laps and then also nearly leading the most just totally didn't make any sense. But I mean, there we were, and Bowman was well on his way to being optimal Wednesday night before he got a little too aggressive with the wall. Bowman really likes running up against the wall, so that should suit him here at Bristol. Last year he finished 23rd, so, but the year before that in the spring he finished 5th. So we've seen that he's capable of running good. You move down the board. Kurt, you're not getting that much of a discount on DraftKings at 8,300, but Kurt is definitely capable of picking up 7, 8 place differential spots, knocking down some fastest laps. Kenseth, the last time that he raced here in 2017, he finished 4th. I'm not too sure that you want to pay 8,100 for 47-year-old Matt Kenseth here at Bristol. Eric Jones, he's kind of compelling, getting discounted to 7K. He's kind of like Truex, even though he's got the JGR behind him. His finishes here at Bristol haven't been that great in the spring: 24th, 26th, and 17th. Ricky's kind of compelling. He finished 33rd here last spring, but before that, 4th and 9th. And then you've got the blocker, Newman. Newman's at 6,800 where he normally should be, but his last 3 finishes here in the spring have been 9th, 10th, and 14th. He's definitely capable of just sitting where he's at and finishing in that typical 13th to 17th range.
Yeah, these guys are interesting because if you just take projections and you optimize, you're not going to get much of them because the guys at the top are such bigger favorites to lead the laps and get fastest laps. And then you got guys starting towards the rear that are better placement plays to pair with them. So you got this range that's kind of lost. Now, Kurt Busch at 8,300, that's less than he's normally priced. And Eric Jones at 7K, that's also a discount, as you mentioned. And as far as points per dollar plays, these guys are pretty good because you got Eric Jones at 7K and you got Daniel Suarez at 6,500. I mean, that just doesn't make sense on its face. So I can see getting to some of these guys as kind of a balanced build. Now, Ricky Stenhouse, man, this guy has been really frustrating me because he's wrecking every time, and then he finishes like, what did he finish? 4th last time. So, man, that was crazy. Now, let's Ryan Newman just doesn't really stand out at that starting position to me. We got a question in chat about Daniel Suarez. He's starting 37th. Now, this year, the expectations were lower. He's been kind of in that second to last tier where I don't think he's a lead lap car at Bristol, but definitely going to finish higher than 37. So is he a filler for you? Is he too expensive at 6,500?
This is a discussion that we're going to have with Suarez probably every week, as long as we're setting the table by the random draw. The Gaunt brothers team, the 96, it's a non-charter team, so they're always going to get the random draw between 37 and 40. So, always be prepared to look at his DraftKings and FanDuel salary and say, does he make value when he picks up his typical 10 spots? For the season, Suarez's worst finish is 30th. That was the first race that they had. You remember they didn't qualify for the race at Daytona. They started the season at Las Vegas, had that weird mechanical issue on the very first lap, end up finishing 30th. His best finish has been 21st, but I'm seeing a lot of 25, 27, 28s. So, Suarez's floor is 10 place differential spots, maybe 12, getting past the rest of this flotsam that he's starting around. At 4K on FanDuel, I think that's that's probably a pretty good safe play, especially if you're trying to pack in a bunch of the high price guys, but still for 6,500 on DraftKings, I think I would just rather pay down for Ty Dillon, even though he doesn't have as much place differential. His potential of finishing higher is that much better than Suarez's.
Yeah, Suarez does seem like a guy where it's the price tag. It seems kind of fair, which means that he's a good play, but not a great one.
Yeah.
Now, one guy I'm really falling on is Ryan Preece. He's he had a really good race, the first one at Darlington, where he was one of probably a top 10 car, maybe on the fringe of that on that night. Now, since then, he's been way back, kind of in the same tier of the drivers that he's priced around, but he's starting 33rd, and I think he's going to finish significantly higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think you're going to use Priest as kind of a guy to fill out your lineups?
Yeah. I highlighted him in the race sheets as a cash viable play because of that 33rd starting position. 6K, it's reasonable for him. I'd rather pay 6K for Ryan Preece as opposed to 5,700 for Corey LaJoie. Yeah, his finishes this year, you've got a high of 18, then a 20th after that, but then you've got that 39th at Darlington, and that was, I believe, due to an engine failure that happened on pit road. So Priest is definitely better than a 33rd starting car. He'll probably work his way into the early 20s, and he could definitely find his way into the top 15. If you remember a couple of seasons ago, Priest was driving the 18 for Joe Gibbs and ended up winning this race in the Xfinity Series. So Priest has got plenty of experience at this track. I like him at 6K. If you didn't want to play Ty Dillon in cash at 6,100, no reason not to just go down $100 to Priest at 6K.
Nice. All right, so I think we've talked about pretty much everyone. We might have missed a guy here or there, but not anyone on the radar. Yeah, so man, this is such an interesting situation because it sounds like there's so much flexibility with the builds. Like, do you go all out to get guys like Kyle Busch, Truex, Keselowski, and go for all those Dominator points, and then you have to really punt for some of these bottom tier guys? Or do you try to build balance? So I think that's going to be the question. Probably, if you're making more than one lineup, do a little bit of both. Yeah, Phil, any final thoughts for how you're going to approach this race this week?
I think balance will probably win in the end. But then again, last Sunday I told everybody that the Coke 600 was going to be a wreck fest, and that ended up being totally false. Like I said, lineup builds are going to come down to expectations. If you think this stays green, then you're looking at a 2.5 to 3 Dominator build. But if this is going to be a wreck fest, then you're probably looking closer to that 4 Dominator build. The one guy that I do want to bring up that we didn't touch is Matty D. Despite continual good finishes to great finishes in subpar equipment, he didn't get priced up by DraftKings, even though he's driving in the number 120, the number 21 for the Wood brothers. At 7,100, he is a sneaky dominator slash finishing position play. Even if he doesn't lead any laps whatsoever, at 7,100, give him a handful of fastest laps, give him a top 5 finish. And we've seen plenty of good finishes from him this year in this equipment. Matty D could sneak under the radar and end up being one of those mid-tier value plays that becomes an optimal play.
Nice. So I like that. Yeah, his odds to win are quite high for that price point, 20-1. You're basically like not going to find any better value than that, and that's not that unrealistic. I mean, that's I have that as about a 1 in 40 chance when you adjust for the take. I mean that's significant, and if he's going to be low owned because of the starting position, that could be a really sneaky play. All right, guys. So make sure to click the thumbs up. I saw a lot of good screenshots in our Slack chat, and when you sign up for the package, if you're not already a member, you get projections, you get the top drivers tool, ownership projections, all really strong weapons you can add to your arsenal. But make sure to sign into Slack and say hi to us. Phil, you're in there answering questions up to the race a lot of weekends, and not to mention we don't do shows for Xfinity and Truck Series, but I have been doing projections and I've seen some good results in those. So you're getting better value than ever before with NASCAR because we got so many races and it's been awesome. So let's keep the ball rolling here. I hope everyone has a good week and a good race tomorrow. And see you guys next week, hopefully, on the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show.